Why do you say that, Father? You aren't afraid, are you?
No, but I respect some of the superstitions of others. Often they are founded in fact.
Broadcasting live from our Sanctum Sanctorum in Venice, California. This is the Sixth Sense Society. I'm your host, Krista, here with our producer, Michael. And today we are excited to welcome back Jacki Smith, who you may remember is the founder of Coventry Creations and co-owner of Candlewick Shop in Ferndale, Michigan. She was on the show in June and talked to us about the archetype of the witch, so make sure to check that out if you have not already. But today she's coming on to talk about candle magic with a twist of astrology. So we're pretty excited about this topic. Before we get started, however, Michael has a few announcements.
Hi, everybody, and thanks so much for supporting the show. We keep getting new subscribers. It's awesome. If you're on YouTube watching us, please click the subscribe button. It helps us a lot. We've got a couple great shows still coming up this month. Next week, Krista and I are going to do our own show, and we're going to talk about the Book of Thoth, the incredible work on tarot by Aleister Crowley. It's not necessarily the easiest read, but we're going to try and demystify some of that for you guys. And we think that anyone who's into tarot, it's just one of those important works that you really do need to try and wrap your head around for sure. And I definitely think one of the most important books that we read, and probably the foundation of a lot of what we do with tarot to this day. The following week, we're going to have our good friend Humberto Braga back on, and he's going to be talking about how to deal with difficult emotions. And with the pandemic and with some of the protesting and everything else going on, I think there's probably a lot of challenging emotional aspects for all of us. So he'll be talking about different ways of trying to process some of that stuff. And he's just a terrific guest, so we're looking forward to that. And then the end of the month, we have Krista's show, Spell It Out, Magic, Reflections, and Shadows. And that's a free-for-all where Krista will talk about whatever Krista is inspired to talk about. I'm hearing rumors it may have to do with something Buddhist this month, but we will find out. Get all the information on our website, sixthsensesociety.com, SIXTH, all spelled out. While you're there, subscribe to our newsletter. It's a quarterly newsletter where we give some links to some of our favorite episodes and some other cool stuff that we find online. And we promise we're not going to spam you guys, just our newsletter 4 times a year. So sign up for that. And if you are so inclined, buy us a coffee on Ko-Fi. It really does help us a little bit. And thank you to all of you who have. It's really awesome, and it helps to defray some of the cost of producing the show. So that's always something we truly do appreciate. And if you can't afford it, join us anyway. It's still awesome. And with that, I'm going to kick it back to Krista, and I'm really looking forward to the topic today. I think candle magic is always just so amazing and interesting. So take it away, Krista.
Great. Thanks, Michael. So welcome, Jacki. We're so happy you're on the show again.
Thank you so much. It was a blast, and I just love the interchange we have. It's great.
That's awesome. So we're obviously very excited about candle magic. We were talking earlier about how it's just one of those forms of magic that appeals to many, many people, even if we don't call it magic. So let's get started. Would you like to? I have a lot of questions. So
go for it. Bring it.
So, well, the first thing I was wondering is, like, let's say I am a beginner and I'm excited about working with candle magic. What would you suggest someone that knows nothing about it, and it's just whether they're a witch or a pagan, they just want to get into it? Where would be a good starting place?
Light a candle. Set an intent and light a candle. That's the best place to start. Wooden matches, Bic lighters, doesn't matter. But I think I've always been a person that if you want to start experiencing something, if you want to master something, just start doing it. It's so easy to get wrapped up in reading about this, and this person says this, and this person says that. And here's the thing about magic, is that somebody at some point decided that this is what magic does, and this is how it works, and this is what this herb means and that color means. Somebody has decided that and put it in a book and sold a bunch. So I challenge anyone who wants to start on magic is be the decider for yourself. For some people, dandelions are the most heinous thing in the world, and some people, dandelions are whimsical and lovely. So just decide what these things mean for you first, and get inspired by what you read. Now, if you want a good book on candle magic, you should really get Coventry Magic by Jacki Smith.
I agree.
I have a lot of correspondences and some ways to get started, and ways to look at magic, and ways to look at candle magic. But really, it's kind of like, when you approach stones. A lot of people love stones and crystals, and they look at this green stone or this purple stone, and they're just drawn to it. And sometimes they don't know why. They're just going to hang on to it, maybe do a little research. So if you go into, forgive me for saying this, but Bed Bath and Beyond, and you just love that vanilla cookie candle, what does that mean to you? What does that passion fruit one mean to you? And so start there and start saying, well, every time I light the passion fruit one, I just have a great day. I'm calm and I feel empowered, and I put on my red bra and I feel like I can take on the world. Well, then let that scent be that to you. And that's really your first foray into candle magic. You are setting an intent, and you're allowing that intent to multiply. If you think about the flame on the candle, it's going to take your intent, and it's going to multiply it, and it's going to communicate it out into the wider world. Wax is an amazing, like chalkboard, shall we say, that you can, it's like, it's like tofu. Whatever you flavor tofu with, it's going to become that flavor. So this is the magical tofu of the world. Candles are, but you can, it's that substrate that you can really put whatever energy you want into it, and set your intent and go. Really, it's really, that's the beginning stages, and don't make it too complicated.
I think that's really good advice. And when you were saying that, I was thinking about all the ways we naturally use candles that are really intentions. So, for instance, for romance, for birthday cakes, for honoring the dead. And we naturally have this connection to fire. And I think going with sort of a heartfelt way of approaching it is probably always good. So, but as you know, many of us that get into magic, we want to get into the nitty gritty, at least for a while. Then sometimes, I find I let it all go. So,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So it's one of the things maybe people wrestle with a little bit when I'm like working at a store that sells candles is, they'll go and they'll ask the staff there, who may or may not know anything, by the way, well, what should I get for this particular issue or that? And so in a way, how would you advise people that don't really trust their intuition? Would it be good for them to work on that first, or again, just maybe start with a book or maybe a teacher just until they got more in touch with their intuition?
Yeah, I think that, and by the way, I don't know if you can hear this, but the lawn people just decided to show up at this
Of course.
particular moment. Hopefully you can't hear that. But so if you don't have your intuition developed, you just need some guidance and some help. One of the best things you can do is read the name of the candle. Just read the name of it and see if it resonates with you. If you're relationship challenged, you're financially challenged, go for the prosperity candle, or whether it's a 7-day or one of mine, which is your better choice. Maybe it's the money draw, or just think about what's my big issue, and just go for it. You really can't get it wrong, because one of the things I love about candles is this is a meeting of heaven and earth. So as the candle burns down, heaven, which has your intent and your best outcome, heaven holds that for us, that the ideal, and it meets earth, which is the candle holder, or as the candle burns down, what you're doing is you're manifesting. It's a visual representation of manifesting. And the secret sauce is your words, your intent. The other thing for any beginner, don't be quiet about it. Sometimes it's so embarrassing. You read the label, or you write your little thing, and maybe it's goofy, and it's like, cash, cash, cash in my pocket, and you get a little quiet, and you're like, well, I'm just going to say this in my head. The universe doesn't respond to whispers. I mean, it does, but it responds with a whisper back to you. So when you have your candle and you declare what you want, you got to get it out of your head. Because if you think about your brain, it's got a gazillion thoughts. If we manifested everything in our brain, oh my God, there'd be monkeys riding on roller skates, riding through our castle, So your brain is just kind of like it's a brainstorm, right? It's not real, it's not factual, it's circular thoughts. So when you bring them out, whether you're writing it or you're drawing a picture or you're speaking it, or maybe you're crying it emotionally, you got to get it out of your brain. And so whispering is not a commitment.
I like that a lot. And I had by accident learned early on that speaking one's intention out loud is very powerful. And especially done with a sense of play. So that idea that getting in touch with that little child spirit, I think that's why the rhymes are good. Also, they're easy to remember, but that gets in touch with that innocent child side that is inside of us. And that seems to be helpful in all magic.
It flips your brain. So when you get into a little rhymey rhyme, this is not how we speak in our day to day. I mean, when we accidentally rhyme, we go, I was a poet and I didn't know it. And it becomes like this fun moment, an almost magical moment. So that when you go ahead and do things in rhyme or rhythm, even affirmations are big. So it's like it makes you dream big. It's like, I am the greatest person in the universe. And it gets you out of this limitation. So I'm in the middle of manifesting right now something I didn't know I was going to manifest. When COVID started and everyone was on shutdown, what I wanted to do is I just wanted people to be in a place of comfort and peace and support, that they had enough to eat, and they had enough to eat and a little bit more, ways to soothe themselves and healthy ways to soothe themselves. And all the videos that I did was about this, and my intentions that I put out there, and little blogs that I wrote, and candles that I lit. I did this huge spell for anyone who wanted their name on this spell, and I had Post-it notes all over, filled an entire wall, hundreds of names.
Wow.
And I just kept the candles going during the early stages of COVID until I got COVID, and then all the candles got blown out so I could just lay in bed. But what happened through that, and through really wanting to be supportive and deciding that we're going to come from a place of abundance. I'm in a crazy place of abundance, and I'm so grateful. But I kept putting those words out there and setting up my candles out there because I wanted us to survive, to move past surviving into thrive. I wanted all the people that I was connected with, I wanted to keep them in a place of thriving. And, you're welcome. We're a bunch of us, we're thriving. It's just this weird shift. And so it's fascinating how all this starts to take place, and all this, when you continue to put those words out there over and over and over again, the universe believes you. And that's the other thing, is that you're not one and done with candle magic.
Right.
People think it's like, well, I lit my candle. When am I going to hit the lotto? And I'm like, oh, God bless you. That's chaos. It's a whole different kind of magic I don't do. But
well, and that's a good point. I was going to bring that up at some point today. So let's get to that idea of, first of all, how do I tell my spell is actually taking, besides getting what I want? Is there a way to check in with it? Because it looks like you have to wait a little bit of time for the spell to work. And you can talk about what that is for you. And also repetition. The idea of repeating does not mean you failed.
So magic works every time, right up until it hits your personal block. So if you are asking for something really large If you're asking for Jason Momoa to show up at your birthday party, it's, number one, he's large, and number two, that's a large ask. But you think really small and think, well, no one's going to show up at my birthday party. Maybe, you have a cousin who works for him and he's going to be in town anyway, but you think really small and no one's going to show up at your birthday party anyway. So it's never going to happen. So it's never going to happen because there's your block.
Mm-hmm.
What I do when I check in for my spells is I actually add that into part of my spell casting. Show me my limitation.
Interesting.
Show me
I
the
like that.
limitation that's going to keep this from manifesting. And what happens is that whether you ask for that or not, you're shown it. So if you start doing a spell and things go awry, there it is. There's your limitation. So it's kind of like you shifted the energy. You started playing the piano and you found the keys that are the strings that are out of tune. So every time you put energy out there and you ask for energy to manifest, it's going to show you why it doesn't manifest. So my definition of magic is healing. If you didn't have something to heal, you wouldn't need to do magic, right? It's already working for you. You won't. It's a strength, not a weakness. We use magic on those points of weakness or lack or inadequacy. I mean, that's not a bad thing. We all have them. We have our weaknesses and we have our strengths. So we tend to do magic around that. So it's going to shake you up. So look at where you're shooken up.
That's a really good idea. I never quite thought it's so obvious now that you say it. But at the same time, I think it's good for people to be gentle with certain issues. I mean, I think we all, being a reader for so long, we all have at least one major issue that is repetitive through our life that we're basically chipping away at. We're not, it's not a bad thing that we don't fix it overnight. In fact, I read something in psychology where if you change too often, it's destabilizing for the ego, and that's not good. We're not built to be constantly changing, most of us, at least on a deep level. And I think it seems like patience would be part of any magic, and also, certainly candle magic.
Yes. And we are not a patient society right now. We want instant gratification. So I talk about there's a couple different ways to do magic. There's a Band-Aid. Sometimes you need a Band-Aid. My check didn't arrive. It's stuck in the post office. And here in this area, we call it stuck in FedEx Oak Park, where all packages go to die. Oak Park, they're just not delivering from that place. So maybe the check didn't arrive and you need a Band-Aid of bringing that money in somehow, some way. And so that's a Band-Aid to fix that. Then there's the change of thought process, maybe a cultural shift for you, as it were. It's a subtle cultural shift. And then there's core healing. So magic has many different levels, and sometimes all you need is the Band-Aid. Sometimes you need a new thought process or a new vibration. You don't know. The best example is how does someone who's never felt love do a love spell? How do you vibrate something it's never been modeled for you? So you might do love spells and that's why you would want to use the tools of the stones, the candles, the herbs, the oils to vibrate that for you. But now you have to learn how to love. That's a big issue for some people. Sometimes that's a major core healing issue. For me, one of my best spells is saying when I did a prosperity spell, and I said, how do I become prosperous? How do I do this thing? How do I learn how to run my business in a way that's prosperous? And I'm setting this intent out there. I have my candles going. And I thought I was going to manifest maybe a new employee or a new accountant or a business advisor. And what showed up was a book. A book showed up. And it changed my neural pathways. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I had never thought about that before.
Mm.
And so I built these new neural pathways. So I have a whole new thought process. And then my prosperity magic came easier. So it's not that, that all of a sudden you're changed. What it is, you have opportunity. So you have to meet your magic halfway. So you
Hmm.
got to meet it at your limitation and say, okay, I'm ready to bridge that limitation. So I have to meet it part way. It's hard to cast a love spell if you never leave your house and don't have internet, you know.
Yes.
Um, and that thought process came to me when I was working with someone who was doing money spells for a new job. They didn't apply anywhere.
Yes, we've come across that one before too. Not with the candle magic, but with just a reading and not even trying to engage in things. And I agree with you on, especially on how things come back to you. And sometimes I'm really delighted by what the universe gives me, and I would have never considered it. One of my every now and then I'll get really anxious about, well, we need to spend this money and we don't have it. And so that happened in the beginning when Michael and I first came out here. We didn't have a credit card and he really wanted to get a computer. And I was all freaked out about, well, how are we going to pay for it? And we don't have the money. And finally inside of myself, I said, well, I don't know how. We're just going to do it, And then what happened was a friend of ours had a computer in storage that he just wanted to loan us, basically. And then as long as he could come use it now and then. And it was actually a better solution because that way Michael could see what he really needed. And then we saved up the money to buy the computer we really needed. I didn't even know that solution was possible because I didn't know he had a computer in his storage, but he just out of the blue started talking about it.
And you have to, and I love that because you have to talk about it. You know how when you're a kid and you make your wish and don't tell anybody? Don't tell anybody your wish. That is opposite of how I think. No, you don't want to tell everybody. You don't want to take out a billboard because then people who you challenge their thought process will go, Joe, you don't want that.
Right.
But you have to talk about it in the right way. You have to communicate it in the right way and develop your intuition. Say, who do I talk to about this?
Right.
You just say, you might have said we're looking for a computer, and then at one point, and then out of the blue, he's like, oh, I got a thing.
Yeah.
But you put it out into the universe.
Right. I think Michael has a question or comment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this comes back to what Jacki was saying about your blocks too, and intentions and energy. And it's a wonderful story is that we were coming close to our hand fasting in Halifax in Nova Scotia. A lady there makes these incredible crafts, hand fasting brooms and wands and so forth. And so there was this one, a little store that we were working at, Little Mysteries, which is now long gone. Our friend Vanessa Smith owned it, and she's moved on to becoming an archaeologist and now one of the curators at the Museum of Natural History in Halifax. But she was operating a little magic store, and she had this incredible hand fasting broom, and Krista just coveted it for her hand fasting, and she had this intent that nobody would buy it but her. And I kept picking it up and going to the cash register and changing my mind and putting it back, and picking it up and going to the cash register and changing my mind and put it back. So finally, a few days before, I ended up buying the thing. And Krista said afterwards, she said, that it was funny because that was at the time when she let it go, that I finally was able to buy it, because her idea was nobody could buy it but her, right? So even I couldn't buy it. And then when I bought it, Vanessa, I was telling her that story after, she said, I wondered what was wrong. She said, you have no idea how many people picked that up, came to the cash register, and then put it back. She said, I thought it was cursed or something. So you've got to be very specific and very careful with your intent, because in her case,
Krista
it was too limited.
She just psychically licked it and said, this is mine.
I love that. I did psychically lick it, and I still have it. It's such a lovely broom.
And you did get it in the long run. You
yes,
just didn't have to come out of your pocket.
When
I was the first time I was hitting the road to teach classes, and I went to the East Coast, and I was going to be gone for 2 months. And I did this with no money in my pocket, just so you know. I think I had enough money for gas to get to the first stop. And people thought I was just this wildly successful candle maker. I'm like, yeah, I got $200. Okay. And you better pay me when I get there. So, but I needed things. I needed a GPS, because maps, I love maps. I use maps all the time, but I really wanted a GPS because it would make it easier. And I was going to be doing a lot of driving, and I had my 10-year-old with me. I needed a recorder. I wanted a recorder, digital voice recorder, so I could record the classes and come back to it. And I wanted, I needed, what was the other thing? I wanted Sirius XM. I wanted, because you go town to town and like you have no radio.
Sure.
I was going to be every other day. I was going to be in a different city. This was a big deal. And so the digital recorder came because back in the day when I was using Staples for all of my office products, I got a coupon in the mail for $100. There that is.
Right.
And then one day I said, I'm going to look up Sirius. So I had this list on a whiteboard, and like, this is what I need for this trip. And there were a few other things, but I got to tell you, and I started putting dollar amounts of what I spent. I had a dollar amount of what I had to spend. And then I spent half of my budget on like these 20 things that I needed, because Sirius XM had a special, or they would give you a free thing and 6 months free just to try them out. And then the GPS was, I had an older phone, and the guy at the store says, well, I can't even, so I tell you what, set it up, pre-order this thing for me, and I'll give you this for this trip. I mean, all this stuff showed up, but that's it, setting the intent and saying, this is what I'm going to go for. And you just meet it halfway. And I let people know that this is what I needed. I'm on a budget, and this is what I need, and this is what I'm doing. They're like, oh, here you go. And of course, candle magic all along the way, candle oil and herb magic all along the way.
The other thing I like about going back to the very beginning of the show, when you were talking about, going into and finding that vanilla smelling candle, is that smell has such a powerful effect on the brain. And and that's why, a certain smell, you'll go around the corner and suddenly you have this powerful memory. And so I think adding the smell, because not every candle has that, a scent, which you can, of course, add to, correct? Add to any candle.
Right. You can, there's ways of dressing 7-day candles, or like chime candles or tapers. And that's how I started out, where you would take that wire hanger and drill the hole and then shove the oil and the herbs in there. That was interesting. That's actually what inspired me to make candles, because I got really tired of doing that. And then the like the taper candles, when I would roll them in the oil, those don't give off a lot of scent when you're doing it. You're smelling it, what you put on there, but then essential oils and fragrance oils evaporate pretty fast. That's why you smell them. By the way, if they didn't evaporate fast, we would not smell them.
Oh.
So when you diffuse your essential oils or put them out there, it's the evaporation. So some scents evaporate faster than other scents, and that's where you have the top note, the heart note, and the base note. So that's why sandalwood, if you use sandalwood like you're going to diffuse sandalwood, it takes a long time for your nose to smell it, because it's a wood, which is a base note. And that's why you would smell that cinnamon or that lemon or citrus right up top, and then your vanillas and a lot of your florals are right in the middle. So you get those top notes when you smell something, and then it takes a long time for the rest to come in. There's a little piece of scent magic, perfuming you might not have wanted to know.
No, that was really interesting. I never even thought about that, the different rate of evaporation.
And lavender is not a nice scent. People think lavender is amazing, but when you get a lavender essential oil, it's very camphory, and it's not pleasant, because you get all that camphor first, and then you get the floral later. So a lot of times even lavender essentials are blended with others just to get that nice lavender that you want. I think so. When I put together the Coventry recipes, one of my favorite recipes I put together was at first I called it the Ancestor, or the Spirit Guide candle. Now it's the Spirit Guide Ancestor. It's just called the Ancestor candle now. It's peppermint in it, and there's musk in it. And so these are all the scents for me as I'm building this scent, and I'm putting the magic in it. These are all the scents that reminded me of my grandmother and
Oh.
old people and
Old people
and so
smells.
old people smells. But it was just like it had to be really, really earthy too. So that recipe, I was completely intuitive. The attraction love recipe was completely intuitive because that has cinnamon and lavender and patchouli in it, and those. So a lot of these recipes that I came up with were not correct according to Scott Cunningham or Paul Barrel, because, and those are my references that I used in building the candles initially, because I just was like, no, that's not it. That's not the thing that I can really embody with this magic. And so every one of my recipes had ritual. Every Coventry recipe had initial ritual around it to bring that energy into it and to make all of these scents connect to this energy. Um, and it's like I asked the spirit of all of those herbs and oils if they were in agreement
Oh, I love
with
that.
this. And do you want to play? Do you want this to be a thing? And then I didn't realize, 28 years later, that they really wanted to play. uh, Bergamot is in my prosperity candle, and and it got put in my prosperity candle because I was growing some the one time I had a garden, and that stuff took off. I couldn't get rid of it.
Oh,
So I'm like, well, that's a good prosperity herb, because it was everywhere. It was in
oh,
the sun. It was in the shade. It just grew everywhere. So, and then I looked up later that bergamot is great for that, as is mugwort. Not mugwort. That's not it. That's something else. I got myself confused for a second. But bergamot's really is not known for prosperity, but what bergamot does is it relaxes you. It relaxes your thought process and it relaxes your inhibitions, and it brings de-stresses. So it's great for your Earl Grey tea. So what a great thing for prosperity, to de-stress and to
sure.
trust in the universe, right? So that's
Yeah.
one of my main things in the prosperity candle. So I decided, right? I'm the decider. I decided that these things worked because of these experiences.
I think that's wonderful. And you're in a position where you can even test it over time because you've been doing it for so long. I did want to touch base a little bit on the side topic which is astrology and candles. And most of the magical community likes to work with lunar magic, which is very common. So what are some of your thoughts about working with candles and astrology and your own experiences?
I used to plan my production schedule based on the phases of the moon and what sign the moon was in. Like the moon was in a earth sign, that's when I would make my stability candle or maybe the prosperity candle. And then I got busy, and they're just I was out of those healing candles, and then the full moon was 2 weeks away. So I had to figure out how to make this work and stay within my integrity. So I started to look at, like, for instance, I only made the prosperity candle during a waxing moon. Makes sense, because that's the Wiccan tradition that I was brought up, my initial magical workings were in. And then I had to look at this going, well, it's not a waxing moon. I have $1,000 in orders for this. Do I just tell you all out of luck and I wait for 2 weeks? What I decided is that I wanted to look at what was going on that day, where the moon was, what sign was the moon in, and use that energy to enhance prosperity. So let's say the moon was waning. We started talking about this earlier. The moon is waning and it's in Aquarius. Well, those aren't particularly prosperous energies, but how powerful it is that energy of a waning Aquarius moon can be to helping us get rid of our emotional limitations around prosperity. So all of that stuff becomes part of that process. And so the moon is never wrong. It's always it's always doing what's supposed to be doing, and it's where it's supposed to be. And so and this came to me when I learned about horary charts. So I was like, why is astrology so good when you just get a reading from an astrologer? Because they do a horary chart and they say, this is where all the planets are. And you asked this question at this moment. So here's what the answers are.
Mm.
The tarot cards were shuffled in this way. So they're in this order in this moment. So this is your reading, kind of falls in line. So I said, well, okay, well, this is when I need to make this candle. This is where the moon is. The intention is super powerful. So I just kind of look at where I am and say, okay, what does this mean that I really want to do this right now? So let's look. I'll look at where things are. The moon this month is we just passed a full moon.
Right.
And
yesterday.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and it was Aquarius.
And it was Aquarius, yeah.
No wonder that was top of mind. But also, we're really challenged astrologically too. We have Jupiter is. Wait, no. I just was reading about all of these astrological alignments where Pluto is opposing Saturn right now. I feel
I don't think it could be opposing Saturn because Saturn and Pluto were conjunct this year. So Saturn is, I think, moving towards Aquarius.
Anyway, I was reading some things about this full moon and I realized, so dream big, Aquarius, dream big. Look at all your possibilities and then also see all your limitations. The way everything lined up was like this full moon was like, okay, dream big. And it's a great time to manifest and set the stuff out. And then while you're doing that, you're going to be immediately faced with how you're limited on this and who opposes you on this. I just remember putting all those pieces together for this. So I started playing with, and Storm Sestavani, he's my astrologer, and we used to do a podcast together. And so he feeds me a lot of the information on this. So we started putting together a cheat sheet of, okay, where's all the planets and what's happening, and then what sign are they in, and just started to put some candles together to play with that.
I think that's really cool because one of the maybe one of my complaints about some astrologers, is that there's kind of like this set way of looking at astrology and planets that no matter what gets kind of passed along. And I like the idea of just trying to consciously work with the energies in your own way, because that's really what the human being is good at.
Right.
It's creative.
Well, learning about astrology from Storm, and I'm not an astrologer. I'm a layperson in all this. I know how to really screw it up. So learning more and more about astrology from Storm and having this magical interpretation on it, it's been a very fun partnership. He'll say, well, this means this and this is doing this. And I say, okay, so how are we gonna wrangle that energy? How are we gonna make that energy work for us? So like for instance, Jupiter is I associate problem solving with the planet Jupiter, that my problem solving candle. And then this Saturn, I associate the stability candle with Saturn. And so they were, several years ago, I did this As the Candle Burns, looking at the astrology of the year and what candles you're going to want to in your tool chest. And Jupiter and Saturn were in opposition. So for opposition, I said, well, the inner balance candle would be great for that, of how this is playing out with the planets and the signs that they're in. So we created this little, like, these two are opposing each other, so we need to find balance between the two, that stability and that expansion, to get anchored in and then see all your possibilities and bring that in balance. So that's kind of how we've been playing with it. And there's times when, like, oh, Jackie, be careful because your Mercury is in this right now, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm working on something deeper and something that could potentially be published in that. So we've been playing with that. Because
what is your view of magic and void of course? Because I know that some people say not to do any kind of magic, but based on what you're saying, you might be able to do some kind of magic when the moon is void of course.
So I always say magic is the most powerful when you need it. And so then if you look at, like, if the moon is void of course, which is like not great, it's very discordant, disharmony energy. So if you're going to do magic during that time, you're going to shake some stuff up. You're going to shake things up, and you're going to, well, say Mercury retrograde. I do magic in Mercury retrograde because I want to find out what's not in a good foundation, where miscommunication is about to be. So I look at the retrogrades and the void of course as amazing opportunities to see what's going to break big and hard when they're not retrograde and they're not void of course. To me, it's kind of like it's a cheat. But if it's something really big that you can't make a mistake on, do a trial run first.
I like that idea. Trial run. How does that work?
So I'm buying a car, and I'm going to buy this car during Mercury retrograde. And it's the way it's working out. And sometimes it's in retrograde so often, that's just what happens. And it's Mercury, and it's a car, and it's short-term transportation, all this other stuff. So I start looking, and I start seeing what offers are coming to me, and then I'll start the process. And then I'll flip some cards or do it and go, nope, not it. So look, I did a trial run. I found out all the things that could go wrong. And then I said, nope, not doing it. And then I learn what's going to go wrong, and then I work on doing it again. Sometimes the trial run is by accident. Sometimes it's on purpose. It's like like if you're going to sign a contract and it's Mercury retrograde and it's just when it's going to happen, you don't get 3 weeks.
Right.
You have 17 people look at it. 17 people who know what they're talking about.
The Mercury retrograde's gotten a little out of hand because when I first studied astrology, no one talked about Mercury retrograde. No one. I think there was a magazine produced by Astrology magazine that was about Mercury retrograde. And I've been going deeper with Mercury retrograde, and Erin Sullivan has a great book on retrograde planets. She's brilliant, and it's way more interesting if you look at it in a deeper way than just things go wrong. And so, and also people forget Mercury is a trickster, and it's connected to thought. And if you really always believe that every time you're in Mercury retrograde, you're going to be miserable, which is not what it means. Nope. You will be miserable because you think that way.
When Saturn was retrograde in my sign, and where my Saturn was in my sign, and it was hitting me hard. And Storm and I talked about this. He goes, well, just look at this as you're finding all the ways that your life is not stable. And this is your opportunity to begin fixing it. So when you fix something during a retrograde, when you resolve something during a retrograde, it's a bigger, deeper resolution. So when I found out some things that were happening during Saturn retrograde they were just like bad foundational stuff. Some of it was like legitimate, the foundation of something. The fix was so deep and personal and so freeing. So
see, I like that. That's someone that's giving you advice, which is my complaint about a lot of, obviously people need to sell their wares and they want to get your attention. And unfortunately, with astrology being so popular and so happy it is, it's also got this dark side now. And I see people like when the summer, every summer, all the planets go retrograde. I don't even think people know how often planets go retrograde for a long period of times. And so someone was just posting about that and how, oh my God, all the planets are retrograde. I said, well, realize every summer something like 5-6 planets are. You have to look at the details of what's going on, because yes, sometimes it's more intense than others. But it's just
about
crazy.
6 years ago, there was like a nice astrological calm. Maybe it was 7 years ago, and it was not very impressive. It was hard to talk about astrology that year because it was like, everything's kind of okay.
No one wants to talk about that. But getting back to working with astrology and the candles, it seems to me that what you're building on is the idea of again, following your intuition a little bit and being creative with what's presented. Because you're right, there's sometimes you really do have to do something and you feel drawn to, compelled to. And that is part of magic, is that desire. I desire to do this right now.
I want to talk about intuition for a second. So we're all intuitive. We all have lots of intuition and we just don't believe it. And if you desire to become a magical practitioner, the very first thing, and actually everything that you do, has to involve your intuition. Making it stronger, listening to it, connecting with it, forgiving it if it sent you in the wrong direction. Um, no one has bad intuition. I just think maybe we don't understand it, and we don't understand the messages we're sending ourselves. So your intuition is all about you. And your intuition is really, it uses your creativity and your imagination to talk to you. And it's you talking to you. It's your higher self, or that connection to the divine, talking to your logic self, going, hey, listen, lady, do a thing. And believe it or not, I wasn't using my intuition as consciously as much as I thought I was until this past year, when I said, I've got really good intuition and I'm not going to doubt myself on this anymore, because people won't believe you, right? You're like, no, we shouldn't be doing that. And then folks will say, you're just lying to yourself, whatever. That's not fact and truth. So this past, it was really last year when I just had I was not initially using my intuition. And then, because sometimes your intuition makes life harder for you. It makes you do things that you don't want to do. And so I wasn't doing those things until it bit me in the ass really bad. So I said, that's it. I'm to intuition, you and me, we're best friends. We're going to do this. And it is insane how well this has worked out for me. From making the right jumps at the right time, and listening to somebody said something like, oh, that's ringing a bell. So that's ringing a big intuition bell. So I'm going to pursue this, and I'm going to let go of this, which wasn't logical. Or I'm going to say no to what I think is an amazing opportunity. Or I'm going to invest in a way that I haven't invested before. And it keeps panning out for me. And so even I'm 51 years old. I've been in the magical, spiritual, psychic development world for over 30 years. And last year is when I said, I need to trust my intuition more. I mean, you'd think I would have been doing it all along, but it's a development. It's your intuition is a muscle. People saying I'm not strong. Well, you are. You just got to build the muscle to be stronger. No one is not strong. You just have varying levels of strength. No one is not intuitive. There's just varying levels of intuition where you touch yourself.
Sure.
That came out wrong, where you're getting in touch with yourself.
That's all right,
Too many words.
It's the magical world. Michael, do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I was just going to say, too, that when it comes to intuition, one of the things I find is people limit themselves by not trusting it or having fear, and they inhibit themselves. I'm afraid to say this because I'll sound foolish, even though I kind of have that intuitive feel. So I think a lot of it, when I try and people tell me, I think intuition is such a normal part of who we are. And so for me, it's not always so much about developing it as such. It's learning not to get in your own way. And you were talking earlier about people putting limitations on themselves. And I think it's the very same thing, that they have that intuitive hit, but then either they're afraid of what someone will think about them, or in some way that they just kind of don't trust it.
And it can come out in the weirdest ways. I was having a conversation with a contractor, and who's doing some work for me. And I said, yeah, it's kind of like, when you were 17 and you had your first job at Tom McCann Shoes. And she goes, what? That was literally my first job. And I'm like, that's weird, because I've never worked at Tom McCann Shoes, and I'm old enough to know what that means. and so is she. But it was just this. And she goes, well, let me tell you, that was a time when and she had this great, amazing memory about this, and she was doubting herself and being able to finish this job. But since that was a great experience, it was like, is this crazy intuition, just like saying this random thing? But that's what intuition does. That's how you start practicing. You go ahead and say that weird thing.
Yeah.
And see what happens.
You have to be, I think, to follow one's intuition, there's this element of not taking yourself too seriously. So one of the issues I've never had with readings is I am not afraid to be wrong. Like that never was we all have different roadblocks, but I know I'm going to be wrong, and I'm not embarrassed about it. And I like to take leaps because I have a sense of curiosity about the cards themselves. So, I find that, that made it easier in some ways, is the idea that I don't, if you don't take yourself too seriously, which doesn't mean you don't take things seriously. I think people get that mixed up. Then it frees you up to just be a little more open to saying these things that end up not being so weird.
You nailed it with that, and so that curiosity, inquisitiveness is so magical.
Mm-hmm.
That allows for so much magic and so many potentials to manifest for you, and not taking things seriously. It's not a joke, but what it is you're not attached to a specific outcome. You're willing to be playful and have fun with it. And that's, to me, it's like, I'm going to have fun with this, and go, oh, okay, that's not that, it's this. Good to know. And that's that playful curiosity. So that is so magical. So intuition, curiosity, playfulness, that's some of the pillars of magic.
Yeah.
So just, some of the best spells I did is when I did this great Barbie doll spell. I needed to do a thing, and I'm like, I'm in the dollar store. Oh, dollar store magic is the best, because you're in the dollar store and you're like, okay, what's here that I can use for a spell? And I stuffed a Barbie. Well, it wasn't a fake Barbie doll. It was whatever. I stuffed it full of herbs and oils and crystals, because they're hollow. They're hollow. The cheapy ones are hollow bodies. So I stuffed it full of all of that and did like a little panorama of what I wanted. Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. I love that. Yeah, dolls, that's another topic too. I do using magic and dolls to help you, in a sense, to be your allies. Mm-hmm. But I think the last component with intuition has to do with self-esteem issues. And I learned this, actually listened to Carolyn Meese and Clarissa Micheliestes. They have a tape on intuition. And I remember Carolyn Meese saying that you have to have good self-esteem, because why are you going to take that leap if you don't have that to begin with? And I thought, well, that's actually good advice for someone to look at if they don't trust their intuition. Ask them, well, what is your self-esteem like? And of course, if self-esteem is imbalanced, it can either be exaggerated or, deflected, or, it can go either way. Healthy self-esteem is just something where you feel, good about yourself, and you don't compare yourself to others, and other people have a right to be successful, and so. But I thought that was really kind of sensible. I never really thought about that, and I said, yeah, psychologically that makes sense.
That's super powerful. You know how there's just the crappiest people that keep getting everything they want. We've seen them. I mean, we don't know what their story is, and I'm got a lot of Libra in my chart, so I'm always thinking about that balance. But it's like, how you're a jerk. Why do you keep getting what you want? And we think they're a jerk, that they go into that category because they're single-minded, they're focused, and of course they will get everything that they want.
Mm-hmm.
Of course it will. There is no doubt in their mind that it would go any way but this. And they're so single focused on that. They're not going to be shook. Shaken. Okay, that's the verb. That's the tense. So, and I've watched them, like, how do you keep getting what you want? And because they're just like, nope, this is just the way it is. Whereas me, I'll go, I don't know, should it be this? Maybe. Am I seeing the right? And so that self-esteem is a huge part of it.
Yeah, and there's different levels, of course, to magic in that. And I think personally, I'm for all the different levels in terms of getting our material needs and things. I'm all for that. But getting that, like you said, it doesn't mean that you're a great person, a spiritually evolved person. I think that gets a few people confused. Like, well, I'm spiritually, working hard on myself and I have improved and how come I'm here and this person's there, but they're not the same thing actually. And I don't think they should be compared. Your spiritual goals may not be the same as your material goals, and they're both valid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You don't have to be broke to be a good pagan.
No.
You don't have to be poor to be spiritual. That is actually a lie taught to us by the people who are in power. It's interesting. The thing that flipped the script on this for me is that, Jesus's father, Joseph, is a carpenter, right? He's a humble carpenter. Historical context, if you're a carpenter, you're one of the richest men in town.
Mm.
So that is a humble carpenter. What? Think about it. Everything was hand built.
Right.
And so Jesus was not poor. He was taken care of. He was a little trust fund kid. So he would go town to town and people would know of him, or he'd have relatives or something. So it was all taken care of. And I just, as soon as I learned that, and this was like a historical context conversation, I was like, oh, and it just hit something in me. I realized how much of my Catholic upbringing, the poor shall inherit the earth, and you have to be humble and poor. I can be humble and wealthy, just so you know, and that's been one of my life's journey is being humble and wealthy, but working out my prosperity issues. So we all have our different journeys, but we don't have. Yeah, I like what you said. I'm all about that.
So we're getting closer to the end. I just want people to know where to reach you. And your website is coventrycreations.com, and you're on Instagram at Coventry Candles. So is there anything lastly that you'd like to share about working with either candles and magic, astrology, whatever you like?
I just want you to do it. It's not evil. If you are going to manifest money in your life, it's going to come to you in a way that makes sense. You're not going to kill anyone or maim anyone. If you want to bring love into your life, unless you're actually out to steal break up somebody's relationship, you're not going to. So stop putting limits on it in that way. If you are powerful enough that your prosperity spell is going to kill your uncle, we have to have a different conversation. But that doesn't happen. Mm. What happens is that you put a prosperity spell out there and the world is already moving. It's already moving and doing the thing, and you're opening up the pathways of this to come to you. So don't be afraid that you're going to go to hell because you decided that you wanted something in your life to make it better. All magic you do for yourself.
And I think that's really interesting to say too, because it ties into this idea that I don't know where it comes from, but a lot of us feel we can't express what we truly want, our deepest desires, and that somehow there's either shame or we've been told there's something wrong with it. And so, you're basically giving permission to people, say, hey, you really want this, then sure, go for it. Now, that doesn't mean I personally am condoning acts of violence.
No,
but I don't think that's true. That's not connected to your true nature.
No, it's not. That is working outside of your nature. Mm-hmm. And so when you tap into and give yourself permission to own your deepest desires, wow, it happens. I'm experiencing that these past couple of years. I've been tapping into my deepest desires and going, no, I really want it. It's happening. It's very exciting.
It's true. And it's definitely a heartfelt energy, if you ask me. So one of the things I always found before I even started working consciously with magic is whenever I felt things in my heart and I really wanted them, I did find ways to get them in often surprising ways. So.
And risk it.
And risk it. Yeah, and take the risk. I like that a lot. So, but thank you again for coming on and sharing
so much.
Your thoughts about candles and making candles and all of that. We really loved it, and I hope everyone out there loves it. And thanks again.
Thank you so much. I could talk about this for the rest of my life. So, and I might.
You probably will.
It is such a pleasure to chat with both of you. It's easy and it's fun, and the time goes away fast.
Well, good. We enjoy it too. So we'll have you back another time, and take good care of yourself, and everyone out there, take care of yourselves. And thank you for listening. Join us next time as we continue to explore the esoteric and the obscure. Have a great week.